Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking some truly eye-opening insights into mental health. Specifically, we're looking at that tragic, often super painful gap between the healthy self and the depressed self. You know, when someone develops depression, things that were once completely natural and effortless literally become impossible overnight. It creates this agonizing disconnect, right? The person is suffering not just from the illness itself, but from this immense guilt of comparing their current state to how they used to be. So today, we're breaking down the source material to reveal exactly what's going on beneath the surface and how we can better understand this invisible burden.
So, what invisible things actually vanish with depression? It's a crucial question. Now, we all know the hallmark signs, right? When we think of this illness, we immediately think of the sheer physical fatigue, the inability to get out of bed in the morning, or just a total loss of appetite. Those symptoms are widely recognized. But our source material highlights something fascinating and deeply misunderstood. There are 7 surprising, entirely invisible things that people with depression suddenly cannot do. And honestly, unless you've experienced it, these are things you might completely misinterpret. Let's explore exactly what these hidden losses are.
Chapter 1. The Internal Battle. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it completely redefines our concept of free time. For a healthy person, a day with absolutely nothing to do, that's a total luxury. It's time to rest and recharge. But for someone with depression, free time is essentially a torture chamber. Because their body is just so utterly exhausted, they might spend the vast majority of the day lying down, seemingly doing nothing. To an outside observer, it looks like they're just sleeping or, being lazy. But the reality, their mind hasn't taken a single second of rest. It is relentlessly haunted by thoughts like, I should have done this differently, or the terrifying question, will I never be cured? This resting mind actually looks like a giant stack of intrusive thoughts. The person's brain is spinning completely out of control, constantly cycling through regret over past events, profound self-hatred, crushing guilt for not being productive, anxiety about the future, and a deep, paralyzing terror that this illness is permanent. They cannot turn this off. The body is horizontal, yes, but the brain is running an absolute marathon of negativity. So when you see them resting, remember, they are absolutely not being lazy. They are trapped in an exhausting internal battle. This brings us to another invisible loss, which is the ability to endure or just be patient. To understand why, we need to talk about emotional reserves. Think of this as the mental fuel required to endure minor inconveniences, to wait patiently in a line, or just brush off a small, everyday frustration. When someone falls into depression, this emotional reserve tank is completely depleted. It literally hits absolute zero. They lose that mental buffer that allows them to tolerate the normal friction of daily life. And this plays out so starkly in everyday moments. Take a minor delay, for example. A healthy person with a full tank of emotional reserves, they just brush it off. No big deal, I'll just wait. But a person with depression is instantly overwhelmed. They simply cannot endure it. To the people around them, this sudden lack of patience can look like selfishness or being incredibly demanding, but framing it this way changes everything. A lack of patience is a direct symptom of the illness. It's not a lack of willpower. They aren't trying to be difficult, they are just running completely on empty. Chapter 2. Social Pressures. This next point captures a genuinely heartbreaking reality. Why can't someone with depression rejoice at good news? Well, look at the disconnect here. Say a friend gets married or a colleague gets promoted. The spoken words are, "Congratulations on the promotion." They can physically say the words, but the internal reality is this crushing thought. They are succeeding, and I am on leave doing absolutely nothing. Every external celebration acts as a painful, unavoidable mirror. It just highlights their current inability to function. Instead of feeling joy, they just sink deeper into depression, mostly because the gap between their friends' progress and their own stagnation just feels insurmountable. Which naturally leads us to ask, why does a simple conversation become impossible? Have you ever tried to talk to someone struggling with a severe depressive episode, and all you get back are unenthusiastic grunts? A quiet, yeah, or an uh-huh? It's incredibly easy to misinterpret this. You might think they're ignoring you, that they're angry, or that they harbor some kind of resentment toward you. But the source material makes it exceptionally clear that this is a physical limitation, not a personal slight. Basically, when the body feels awful, conversation itself is simply too painful to sustain. On those really bad days, the mere act of processing words and formulating a response is physically and mentally exhausting. They just can't keep it going. However, and this is absolutely vital for friends and family to hear, on good days, they definitely can talk. When their condition allows,
Actively engaging with them, letting them initiate, and just being a willing, zero-pressure listener is a crucial lifeline. Now, imagine taking that conversational exhaustion and magnifying it by 100. That's what casual catch-ups or class reunions feel like. Just think about the fears triggered by these events. What am I doing for work? Nothing. What have I accomplished lately? Nothing. I'm not moving forward. They experience a complete lack of confidence. Even though a part of them desperately wants to see their old friends, the fear of exposing their current struggling self completely overpowers that desire. They feel like they have absolutely nothing proud to share, which ultimately leads them to reject the invitations entirely. Chapter 3: The Future and Recovery. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole problem with the future. Consider a simple text message. Let's grab a drink next month. To most of us, this is a happy, harmless invitation, right? But to a depressed person, it creates immense, suffocating pressure. Why? Because they cannot guarantee how they will function a month from now. They might not even know if they'll have the energy to get off the couch this afternoon. Committing to a future event feels like a total trap. The fear of having to cancel and letting people down becomes so overwhelming that they just avoid making the plans in the first place. Let's walk through how this builds into a devastating pattern. We start at step 1, the fear of breaking future promises. Because of this fear, they move to step 2, declining invitations out of pure guilt. They feel horrible saying no, but even worse saying yes. Over time, this leads to step 3. Friends eventually stop sending invitations altogether, usually assuming they just don't want to hang out. And finally, step 4, they suffer from dramatically deepened isolation. The tragic irony here is that their deep fear of being a burden to others ends up making their loneliness and their depressive symptoms so much worse. So when they do start getting treatment, why is recovery so hard to notice? Well, the source explains that people with depression struggle immensely to recognize their own healing. The very sensation of feeling better is blunted by the illness itself. Progress with depression is famously nonlinear. It is pretty much always 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. If they compare how they feel today to how they felt last week when they had a rare burst of energy, today might feel like a massive failure, convincing them they are actually getting worse. So the absolute crucial point is how you measure that progress. You cannot use a micro lens. You have to use a macro lens. Viewed on a longer timeline, the perspective completely shifts. For instance, if you look at 1 year ago, the person might have been bedridden all day, waking up at 2 p.m. Today, maybe they're just able to go for a short walk, and they're actually waking up in the morning. Is it perfect health? No. But compared to a year ago, it is monumental progress. Recovery must be viewed through this long-term lens. And because the patient often can't see it themselves, they desperately rely on the people around them to point out these victories. Conclusion: forgiving yourself. We've covered a lot of ground today, but the most vital takeaway is this: do not blame yourself. It is the illness, it's not a personal failure. If you're going through this, the absolute worst thing you can do is weaponize your past against your present. You cannot blame your previously hardworking, energetic self for the natural biological symptoms of a disease. If your battery is completely drained, if your patience is gone, if you can't make plans, it's not because you are weak, it's because you're sick. And sickness requires care, not self-condemnation. Which leaves us with this final thought to carry with you. How can you show a little more grace to yourself or someone you love today? Whether you're the one fighting the internal battle on the couch or you're the friend trying to understand why your texts are going unanswered. Understanding these 7 invisible losses really changes everything. It replaces frustration with profound empathy. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. Take this knowledge, share it, and most importantly, use it to be just a little bit kinder today.